Hello, everyone. I'm Peggy Northrup, Chief Content Officer of Radivision and host of Chiconomics. Welcome to Season 2 of our series honoring women founders and CEOs who inspire us with their superpowers, among them creativity, a spirit of collaboration, and, of course, persistence. Today, I am pleased to be with someone who is a champion of extraordinary women founders and is on a mission to get more of us to use our investing power to create change. Marcia Dawood is host of the podcast, The Angel Next Door, author of the upcoming book, Do Good by Doing Well, which is coming out in September, and a TEDx speaker. She is chair emeritus of the Angel Capital Association and a founding member of the ACA's Growing Women's Capital Group, as well as an advisor to the SEC. She's an investor in more than 50 early stage companies, and she's also a venture partner with Mindshift Capital. So I can't really do your background justice, Marcia. There's so many more things on your resume, but let me just start by saying thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I want to mention the fact that you have this wonderful TED Talk where you talk about your journey to becoming an angel investor. Would you share what that was like for you? What made you begin?
Sure. Well, I was invited to a meeting in 2012, and my husband came home one day and said, "Hey, we got invited to this angel investing meeting." And I was like, "What's angel investing?" I didn't even know what that was. And we went to the meeting, and when I walked in, I was kind of like, "Well, am I even supposed to be here? Is this like something for me? I thought, investing was like for rich people, and are we going to pick some stocks here?" I just had no idea what I was walking into. And I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time. And I started to see some entrepreneurs talking about their companies and the innovation that they were working on, the change that they were trying to make in the world. And I was fascinated. I couldn't believe that there was this much innovation going on in my own backyard in Pittsburgh. I thought this has to happen only in the coastal cities, maybe California, Silicon Valley. And here I am in Pittsburgh learning about how much innovation happens in universities all over the country and all over the world. So I just was totally hooked. I couldn't wait to go back to the next meeting and hear from the next set of entrepreneurs and hear about what they were doing. I had worked in a corporate job for the same company for a very long time. And we kept like doing the same things and expecting different results. And I know that, by definition, that is insanity, but it keeps happening sometimes when you're especially when you're in a big company where you do keep doing the same things. And you're like, okay, we're going to do it a little differently this time. But I was still like, no, this seems like the same thing. So when I started learning about all of these different companies and what they were working on, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a world I didn't even know existed. And so then we started to have to move around a little bit around the country because of my husband's job. So I ended up moving to New York City. Now I was like, whoa, there's got to be all kinds of stuff going on here. And there was. But what I came to find out is how little funding goes to women and people of color. Because I got involved in an angel group there that was focused only on women-led companies. And I was just fascinated to learn that less than 3% of funding goes to women. So that really started me on this journey of like, how do we change this? How do we get to a point where we can see the innovation that we really want to see in the world, that it goes across equality for everyone?
Wonderful. Yeah, I think you and I relate to angel investing in very similar ways. I mean, I come from a creative background with people who are artists and poets and photographers, and I love people who can make something out of nothing. And when I discovered entrepreneurship, I thought, oh, this is the same impulse. These are people who want to create something new, who look at the world and say things could be otherwise. So I love that orientation. I think that's something that oftentimes people don't think about when they're thinking about business, is how creative it can be. So you mentioned, and I think these are common objections to angel investing. People say, oh, that's for rich people. You have to be super rich. Oh, that's for people who live in big cities. Oh, that's for people who, have a really, really, really long time horizon. How do you deal with those kinds of objections?
Well, for the most part, before maybe 10 years ago, that was kind of true. I mean, you did have to, if you wanted to invest into a venture capital fund, you probably had to commit at least $250,000, which is not doable for the majority of the country.
Right.
And or you had to know somebody to even if you had the money, did you
Mhm.
know somebody who could put you in the right place? So in 2016, the Securities and Exchange Commission changed the rules and added this element of equity crowdfunding. And now crowdfunding, a lot of people know about because uh, it's a little bit like when GoFundMe, you try to
Right.
do something for a cause, or Kickstarter, and you're trying to buy something before you're manufacturing. Equity crowdfunding, you can invest just a little bit of money and get a small piece of ownership into the company, and this can be as little as $50. You don't have to be
Mhm.
rich. You do have to have an internet access and a bank account or a credit card, but that's fairly low barrier to entry considering what it used to be.
Right.
So this new way of investing, it took a while to actually get platforms to have a lot of, it's the marketplace. So there has to be people who are raising the money, and then there has to be investors. That doesn't happen overnight. So it has been 8 years since that started, and it's slowly starting to take off. It's still a pretty small amount of the way that money gets raised. But the SEC report that came out at the end of 2023 said that 70% of the money that was raised through equity crowdfunding was raised from non-big cities. So a
Wow.
lot of the smaller cities in the middle of the country, and a majority of the people who were raising on the platform were underrepresented founders. So that would be women, people of color, disabled, all of the things. So it is a way to start and to me it's a way, especially if you have a consumer product or something that you're marketing to the public, it is a way to get that first money in, or get the market traction, get the customer validation that you really need.
That's right, because then if you're investing in something, you wanna actually see the product. You wanna be the first on the list to go buy the product, and
Yeah.
that's a built-in marketplace. It's a really new way of doing things. Well, I'm curious, you talked about women and underrepresented founders. On the investing side, I know that the numbers of women investing in companies is really growing up, going like wildfire. And, we are 51% of the population. There's
Yes.
a huge, this is the first generation of women, my generation, our generation of women. They were the first ones to enter our 50s and 60s with money that we made ourselves. So we didn't inherit it. Our husbands didn't give it to us. So but women are kind of a little bit behind in terms of investing. What do you think women must know about this sector? What would convince them, do you think?
So, in general, of course, I'm making general statements, but
Yeah.
in general, we as women, we want to know everything before we can make a decision.
Right.
Kind of like you've heard the example before where on a resume, or like a job application, if a
Yes.
guy sees it and there's 7 qualifications, he has one, he's like, I'm in, and
Right.
then a woman sees it, she's like, I have six, but one of them, I don't know,
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so that's just our nature. We want to know before we jump in, and I totally get that, but early stage companies, they need a lot of help besides just money. Of course, they need money,
Mhm.
but they need expertise. They need to be surrounded by super smart people. Women have so much to offer there. Just starting to get in and learn about it. It's not like some huge thing that you have to know before you can do anything. So I guess my best advice would be just start doing something a little bit, so that
Mhm.
then that will start to give you a little bit of the snowball effect into, okay, I get this. I'm learning, and the people that you get to meet along the way, there's so many, great things that happen, that I just think if we just can get started and get past oh, okay, well, I can't really get to that till like next month or next year
Mhm.
because it's just too daunting.
Right, right. Yeah. And obviously the kinds of things that women are investing in or can be investing in are deeply meaningful for us
Absolutely.
as women, for our own bodies and for those of our families. And I know you have a very personal story about, dealing with your mother's illness and realizing that there are people who are working on this problem, that are not necessarily getting the funding that they need. So I certainly, in terms of women's health, this is a huge area where we can make a difference. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of the healthcare, up until even a few years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, it, was based on, for women, it was like, okay, well, women are just little men. So whatever the
Right,
research was, if it was done on all men, well, we'll just adjust the dose or whatever for women, and
right,
maybe not even because women are humans, men are humans, so we'll just call it a day.
right. And our hormones mess up the data, right? That was always what I heard, right? You can't test this on women
Yes.
because of their hormones, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's really not good. So, anything that we're doing right now to focus on women's health and really the movement, I guess you'd call is femtech. We hear that term
Yes.
now a lot more than we did before. And, I just think it's important that we start to really look at the things that matter to us. And, women need to be surrounded by people that look like them. We need to
Mhm.
get more people, check writers who look like the people that we're trying to back and who can understand the types of things that they're, the types of innovation that they're working on. I've heard groups of men, investors, tell a female founder who is working on an incontinence problem that, well, I don't even know that this is a problem because my wife doesn't have it.
Oh my God, I was gonna say exactly the same thing. I remember when I was raising money and for my little entrepreneurial venture, and men in the room saying, "Well, my wife doesn't think that this is, she doesn't read that stuff." Whatever it was. It's like, "Oh
Right.
man, if I had a nickel for every man who said that his wife didn't have a problem, I would be a rich woman today."
Right.
Yes, but when I think about osteoporosis, I know that there was a woman I'm interviewing next week, who has OsteoBoost is in the marketplace now. It just got FDA approval. This is a woman founder working on a problem that so many women have with osteoporosis. And the drugs that are available for that have so many side effects. So it's we need more innovation in this marketplace, especially as women are getting older. Anyway, that's my
Yes.
pitch for femtech because I think it's very, very important. Um,
Yeah, and if I could just add about
yeah,
the what happened with my mom and when I was looking
yeah.
for something for her, I found, my mom had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and it's a disease that is horrible. There's no treatment, no cure, but
Mhm.
it only affects about 30,000 Americans at any given time. So that is such a small percent of the population, considering how many people are affected by other ailments like cancer and all those types of things, that there isn't nearly as much research done on it. So if we look at, charitable organizations, which sometimes we think, oh, well, that, they can help. They've got, that's why they raise money so that they can work on treatments or cures. Well, when it came down to it, I ran into, across a woman who was doing some incredible work on trying to help get a treatment for ALS. And she said that every time she went to a charity, they would give her, some money, but it would always be on the caveat that, well, you have to hit, these milestones. And the amount of money she was getting was like $100,000 at a time. Well, we know for any type of like medical treatment, you need hundreds of millions, if not billions of
Right,
dollars to be able to affect anything. So how is she going to get anywhere when the only money that she was actually getting was this, small, little
right.
doses of
Nickels and dimes.
exactly. And it
Yeah,
just it wasn't gonna go anywhere. So it was kind of like a big it was like the perfect storm of bad because it wasn't a
yeah.
big enough disease to, like, really get attention, but yet the attention that it was getting wasn't enough to even get it past go.
Right, right. And so when you think about it in the bigger marketplace, so many women's health issues are seen as those kind of orphan problems.
Exactly, yes.
Right, right. Well, it's a place where we can all make a difference by thinking differently about the way we invest, about thinking differently about proportions of our 401ks. That's something that I think a lot of people don't understand is that you have the opportunity as part of your 401ks, all that money that you set aside, say, I'm not going to think about this until I'm 70 something. that's an opportunity for investing in the things that you really care about. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So with 401ks and IRAs, there's the ability to have some or as much as really you'd want to be self directed, we call it. So
Mhm.
you could invest then into a for profit company, just like you would into a stock in the public markets, so that you could support, female entrepreneurs if you wanted, or whatever, the causes that you're caring about. But the nice thing about investing through a retirement account is, the gains, hoping that
Mhm.
there would be gains,
Mhm.
would be, tax deferred or, however, if it's a Roth, or I won't get into all the details about IRAs, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you can look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing is about this time horizon. So, liquidity is an issue for all angel investors. It is a risky asset class. We do say, in general, the rule of thumb is don't invest more than like 5%, 7 at most percent of your investable assets into a risky alternative asset class like art or angel investing or wine,
Right.
whatever you want to talk about. So, these things they're very, they're illiquid. But with an IRA, you have time because you're not
Mhm.
going to really get to that money until XYZ date. And so now you could kind of let that sit there without thinking, oh my gosh, I got to pay my kids college.
Right.
Buy a house and all those things.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think it's a great tool for people, and it does mitigate some of that, that idea of, "Oh my gosh, this is too risky for me, given all the other things I need to do in my life." Is there any other advice that you have for people about dealing with risk, even the emotional side of that? When you make an investment and it doesn't work out, a lot of people will say, "Well, that's it, I bought that at auction and I'm never gonna do that again," or, "I
Right.
bought a house in that market and I'm never gonna buy a house again." And you miss out, but you got to get over it, right? How do you deal with that?
Well, many years ago when I first started, I only learned at the very beginning to invest directly into a company. And,
Right.
that still happens and that's great. But that's really hard to sustain because you
Mhm.
really do at that point have to have a lot of money if you're going to invest as an individual angel into company after company, because you need to have that diversified portfolio because some will make it, some won't make it. They're early companies. It's risky.
Right.
But nowadays, there are funds out there that allow you to put up as little as $10,000 and be able to get exposure to, 10, 15 companies all at one shot. And now all of a sudden your risk is minimized. So
Right.
there are chances of losing all your money because anytime that you make an investment like this, there is the chance that you're going to lose all your money. But the chances of you losing all your money when it's invested in 15 companies as opposed to one are a
Right.
lot different. So
Exactly.
I really am a huge fan of funds. So, when I say in my bio that I'm an investor in, 50 plus, companies and funds, that's through funds too. I didn't just write checks, like,
To 50 companies.
it's
Right.
into all these different companies. I
Yes.
was working with fund managers or I was the fund manager, and then we would invest in the companies.
Exactly, exactly. And on our website, in fact, for those of you who are listening or watching this on radavision.com, you can find on the Sheconomics channel, you can find lists of all of these funds. And there are lots and lots and lots of them
Yes.
now. The one that where Marcia and I met each other was one particular fund, the portfolio funds, but there are lots of others these days as well. Um,
Yes.
so you mentioned a little bit about the other rewards that you get from angel investing. It's not necessarily money. I mean, I know I've had this feeling of, I wrote my first check to a fund and I thought, wow, now I'm like really a grown up, right?
Right.
But there's also that opportunity to give advice that maybe you can't use in your corporate job. I mean, those of us who've worked in corporations have a lot of experience that, as we know, it's like, I had this great idea, but there's just no place. I have a great Scrabble word and no place to put it.
Right.
So that angel investing can give you that opportunity as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. There are just so many things. I always say, if you're in angel investing solely for the financial rewards, I'm not saying you're not going to get them, but it's going to take a long time. Your money will be tied up, it'll be illiquid, you'll be frustrated. It's probably
Yeah.
not it should not be your number one and only reason to do it. It does have a lot to do with, are you helping to make the change that you want to see in the world? Are you helping the people that you want to see succeed? The next generation, the people who have, made some progress and they're going to make more progress. Those are the things that, to me, I just think are amazing. I just being able to help a founder and get them to go from, where they are at the very beginning days, and then you kind of watch them and you watch them grow and watch their team grow, you watch them get traction. I just got news this morning that one of our portfolio companies that has a product, an influencer really liked the product, talked about it on TikTok, and within
Wow.
2 days, they had 500,000 views on this
Wow.
influencer's TikTok, which equaled over $100,000 in sales for them in one weekend.
Fantastic.
This is the type of stuff that, if we keep as a community, we're community people, especially women. We're
Mhm.
super
Yes.
community people. And if we can keep that going, like, to me, that's so good. It's like so juicy. And
Yeah.
that you could potentially get financial rewards at the same time. But really, another big reason is, and it goes back to the whole community thing. My husband is a huge golfer, and it would just annoy me that he was spending 4 or 5 hours on the golf course, and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" Right? But then I realized one day he came home and he was like, "Hey, I got to play golf with, such and such," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm jealous. I'm jealous
Yes.
of the connections that he's getting on the golf course.
Right.
Like, where's my golf course?" But then I was like, "Wait a minute. Kind of have found my golf course now, because I get to meet all these cool people that I'm doing angel investing with. It leads to other things and other projects that you're working on. We're working on a project right now called Show Her the Money Movie. It's a
Oh,
documentary.
yeah.
It's a 50 city tour right now. It's all about how women don't get enough venture capital funding. We're bringing awareness to that. So, uh, just getting to know those people and learning about that. I mean, just so many cool things. So I think this is a way for us as angels to have better networking opportunities, but then also to get those founders and entrepreneurs into a place where they can be successful. Starting a company and growing a company is such hard work. Like, we
Yes.
need to really help them and surround them by the right supports.
Right. I love that this is your golf course. And I also think, for those of us who have it's a wonderful way to meet people, and it helps you in your career. I mean, the fact that I remember when I was early in my career, and the fact that I grew up in a family business, a family media business, and I heard about the business side all the time. And so I was educated in a way that a lot of my peers were not, which led to amazing opportunities. This is a way of educating yourself that helps you in your career, because you're learning about other people's problems. You're learning about the problems of how to scale a business. You're getting consumer insight. So I really do recommend it for people, just as a way of vastly expanding your knowledge base, as well as your network. You never know how that's going to impact your career.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, look, what trends are you seeing right now in angel investing or in the market that you're really excited about?
Well, it's been an interesting couple of years, especially since
Mhm.
the pandemic had started. So in 2021, we saw the heyday of raising capital in early stage companies. I mean, venture, angel, you name it. It was pretty easy to raise money. There were a lot of exits going on. The stock market had just started to come back from after the pandemic woes, and things were great. It was like total heyday. And then 2022 happened, and
Mhm.
the last 2 years have been really, really rough for entrepreneurs. Anybody trying to raise money who is in any type of a cash strapped position in the last 2 years has either had to raise at a flat round, some have had to raise at a down round. There have been a lot less companies raising at that up round. So what I'm seeing happen now is we're starting to see a bit of a shift. And I'm hoping from what we're seeing that by the end, toward the middle to the end of 2024, we'll start to see more exits happening. And when we start to see more exits happening, then you'll see those people start to put more money back into the ecosystem and the whole thing starts all over again. But I think entrepreneurs, if they weren't super, ready to just hunker down and, be really focused on the business and be extremely scrappy, the last 2 years have been really rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I think that is one place where certainly the data shows how incredibly scrappy women are as a class of entrepreneurial leaders, that they're super capital efficient. I've seen some of these statistics and it's like on every measure, women in general do better. Women-led teams do better than non-diverse teams. So hopefully women will start to really benefit from the upturn in coming months. Now, not to get too far into the weeds, but because you are an advisor to the SEC, are there things in the regulatory environment that we should pay attention to, or is it for most of us, it's not going to make much difference?
Oh, no, it's going to make a huge difference if some of the things happen that could potentially happen, and that's around the accredited investor definition.
Right.
Every 4 years, that does get relooked at. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the accredited investor definition is like the gateway of where the SEC says, okay, you can invest in a private company because you have enough income or wealth, $200,000, $300,000 with a partner in income, $100,000 or $1 million minus your home and wealth. If you meet those thresholds, you are considered, I don't know, smart enough. That's not really the best way to
well off enough.
You're in a financial position where you can go ahead.
You can take some risk. It's like, but it's checking a box, right? It's not, you don't have to submit your statements to anybody. It's just like, I attest.
Exactly. You're just attesting that you have that. But the definition was put together in 1982. It has not been indexed at all in the last 40 years. So we are concerned that there's been talk that it could be indexed for inflation. And if that's the case, those numbers would change dramatically. And at the ACA, we did a very loose poll survey, certainly not statistically significant, but figured out that probably at least 50% of angels would be eliminated from being able to make angel investments because of the changes. So what we're doing right now, and in fact, we have an upcoming meeting where we'll be talking about what can we recommend as an advisory committee. That's our job, is to make recommendations to the commission. And what could we recommend that might be able to be some sophistication levels that would not necessarily deal with income or wealth. So while the income and wealth thresholds, I understand why they're there. They're for investor protection so that people don't spend all their money in investing in early stage companies. But people could also take all their money to a casino or the lottery.
I was just thinking of the poker games that some people like to play.
All kinds of things that you could do with your money. So I get that. My personal thing, and of course, these are all of my own opinions, but is that we need something that can help educate people on the risks. Just like we were talking about earlier, I didn't know when I first started that, you could invest in a fund. And back then there really weren't nearly as many as there are available today that you could do that with. But I didn't know that that was even a thing. If I had any kind of education ahead of time to say, hey, this is kind of what this is all about, and maybe you could, look at this or that before you actually go and make any investments, that to me would have been like, really valuable.
And that speaks to us as women wanting to have our ducks in a row and wanting to educate ourselves and be prepared. And, the Girl Scouts that we are. And in fact, the ACA does have a course for people who want to learn more about angel investing, which we will talk about in future episodes. But for people who are interested, you can go to the Angel Capital Association and learn more. So that's great. Thank you so much. Well, my last question for you now, as here at Sheconomics, we use this word superpower to talk about, what is it that women really bring to the marketplace? And what I see is, we bring this creativity, we bring this spirit of collaboration. We are really, it's certainly we're competitive, but we also are interested in connecting women with other women so that we can all rise together. And I'm curious whether you feel like you have a superpower. What would that be if you had to name one thing?
Well, I love the idea of connecting people. That's so good. And you're right. As women, we're like, that is all of our superpowers. I think I've seen so
Yes.
many women be doing that. But lately, and what's happened in the last couple of weeks is I've been helping some entrepreneurs, and they're like, "Hey, will you look at my pitch deck and see what you think about it?" And sure, we can all give our kind of I call it drive-by advice about their pitch deck. But in most cases nowadays, I'm not getting past the first slide with them because they aren't identifying how big the problem is that they're trying to solve. So I see too many companies that are a solution in search of a problem. They're like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I got this great, XYZ widget, yada, yada." But you're like, "Yeah, but is it really necessary? Like, we already solved that by doing whatever." There's like your competition, and it might not even be that you have the exact competition, but if you're already solving the problem with something that was invented, like, it's like, "Oh, I made a brand new, type of way to cook." Okay, but
Yeah.
we've been using stoves, like, for a really long time. Like, you
Yeah.
really think we're all gonna change our behavior and stop using a stove? I
Right.
don't know, I'm a
Right.
little leery about that. So, I think in the last couple of, and I've been really challenging these entrepreneurs to say, really drill down and tell me what the problem is. Like, how big is the problem? What would it mean with your solution, and what does that equate to? Those types of things. So I'm kind of thinking, lately, at least that's what they're telling me. They're like, "Oh, we get it now.
Yeah.
We're gonna be able to now attract people to," because I mean, if you can't get past the first one or two slides in a pitch deck, like, no investor's going to keep listening, right? So you
That's right. That's
gotta have.
right. So your superpower is bringing clarity and focus to that process. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Marcia, thank you so, so much for being with us today. I really appreciate
Of
it. Is
course.
there anything else that I have not asked you about that you really want to get across to people?
Well, this whole idea of doing good while doing well, I think is something that we need to re-wrap our mind around, because I think the word investing is something that people think, well, if I make an investment, then I need to have done my diligence to know that I'm going to get a financial return. And then I think also the second thought they're having in the back of their mind that they might not even be articulating is, but if I don't get a financial return, I'm going to look dumb.
Mhm.
And that would be really bad. So let me no, I'm just not gonna do it at all. Or I'm only gonna do it where I absolutely know my financial planner has told me I'm definitely gonna get this or that out of the public markets or whatever it is. So this mindset around investing, because to me, investing means you're investing with everything, your money, your time, your heart, the passion, the things you care about. That's what you're really investing with. So doing good and doing well can happen. We need to think about it differently. And if we do, like, imagine the kinds of changes we could see in the world if everyone, especially nowadays with the accessibility for people to invest like even 100 or $200 as opposed to 250,000 back in the day. If people just started to get in the game and really do this, we could see, so many amazing changes.
That is wonderful. And of course, that is the name of your book. Please
Yes.
tell people where they can pre-order your book, which is coming out in September, but I know you can start learning about it now.
That's right. You can go to my website, marciadawood.com, and there's all kinds of information there. Sign up for the mailing list so you can get all the first information about it. And then, of course, listen to my podcast, The Angel Next Door, all about how anyone can be an angel investor.
Wonderful. Marcia, thank you so much. It's always great to see you. Thanks for
Always
joining
good to
us
see you.
today.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks for
Take
having
care.
me.
Thank you.